In the bustling city of Florence in 1504, where the Renaissance was in full bloom and the air was thick with the scent of ambition, two of the greatest artists of the age walked paths that often crossed in rivalry. Leonardo da Vinci, a man of 52, with long hair tied back and a beard that spoke of wisdom, worked in a modest workshop tucked away in a narrow alley near the Arno River. His space was a sanctuary of creativity, its stone walls lined with shelves of leather-bound books, sketches of flying machines, and anatomical drawings that revealed his insatiable curiosity about the world. At the center of the room stood a wooden easel, holding a canvas that had consumed Leonardo's thoughts for nearly a year, a portrait of a woman with an enigmatic smile, a work he called Mona Lisa. Dressed in a simple tunic, its sleeves stained with paint, Leonardo sat on a stool, his dark eyes fixed on the canvas as he applied delicate strokes with a brush, each movement a testament to his pursuit of perfection. Across the city, in a grand studio filled with marble dust and the echoes of chisels, Michelangelo Buonarroti, a fiery 29-year-old sculptor, carved away at a block of stone that would soon become his masterpiece, the David. Michelangelo was a man of raw energy, his muscular frame clad in a dusty apron, his hands rough from years of shaping stone. His talent was undeniable, his reputation growing with every commission. But beneath his confident exterior burned a deep-seated rivalry with Leonardo. The two men had clashed before, on the streets of Florence, in the halls of patrons, and in the minds of the city's elite, who often debated which artist was the true master of the age. Michelangelo, with his bold, monumental style, saw Leonardo's meticulous methods as a sign of weakness, a painter too lost in his dreams to produce anything of real value. When he heard whispers of Leonardo's new portrait, a work that had already captured the curiosity of Florence's wealthiest patrons, Michelangelo's jealousy flared like a wildfire. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city's red-tiled roofs, Michelangelo strode through the streets of Florence, his cloak billowing behind him, his mind set on a plan. He had heard that Leonardo was preparing to unveil his Mona Lisa to a select group of patrons, including Lorenzo de' Medici's cousin Giovanni, a man whose favor could secure an artist's legacy for generations. Michelangelo, who had been passed over for a recent commission in favor of Leonardo, saw this as an opportunity to undermine his rival. If he could discredit Leonardo's work, make it seem flawed or unworthy, he might reclaim the spotlight for himself. With a smirk on his lips, Michelangelo gathered a small group of his apprentices, young men eager to please their master, and devised a scheme to sabotage the unveiling. The next morning, Leonardo's workshop was a hive of activity as he prepared for the evening's presentation. His pupils, Francesco and Marco, moved about the room, grinding pigments and cleaning brushes, their faces a mix of excitement and nervousness. Leonardo, as always, remained calm, his hand steady as he added the final touches to the Mona Lisa. The portrait was unlike anything he had created before. A woman with a faint, mysterious smile, her eyes seeming to follow the viewer, her hands folded delicately in her lap. The background, a misty landscape of winding paths and distant hills, was painted with a technique Leonardo had perfected over years of study. Sfumato, a method of blending colors so softly that they seemed to melt into one another, creating an ethereal, almost magical effect. But there was something more to the painting, a secret Leonardo had hidden within its layers, a detail he had not yet revealed to anyone, not even his closest pupils. As the day wore on, Michelangelo's plan took shape. He sent one of his apprentices, a sly young man named Paolo, to infiltrate Leonardo's workshop under the guise of delivering a message from a patron. Paolo, dressed in a simple tunic to blend in, slipped into the workshop, while Leonardo was distracted, speaking with Francesco about the evening's arrangements. The apprentice's eyes darted around the room, landing on the Mona Lisa, which sat uncovered on its easel, its surface still wet with fresh paint. With a quick glance to ensure no one was watching, Paolo dipped a small brush into a jar of dark pigment and smeared a streak across the canvas just below the woman's face, a blemish that would be impossible to miss. Satisfied with his work, he slipped out of the workshop, his heart racing with the thrill of sabotage, and returned to Michelangelo with a triumphant grin. "It's done, master," Paolo said. "The painting is ruined. Leonardo will be a laughingstock tonight." Michelangelo's lips curled into a satisfied smile as he imagined the scene, Leonardo unveiling his precious portrait, only for the patrons to gasp in horror at the defaced canvas, their whispers of disappointment spreading through Florence like wildfire. "Good," he said, clapping Paolo on the shoulder. "Tonight, we'll see the great Leonardo da Vinci fall." But what Michelangelo didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Leonardo's genius extended far beyond the surface of his paintings, and the Mona Lisa held a secret that would turn his scheme against him in ways he could never have imagined. That evening, the grand hall of Giovanni de' Medici's palazzo was filled with the elite of Florence, nobles in silk gowns, merchants in velvet doublets, and artists who had come to witness the unveiling of Leonardo's latest work. The room buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with the scent of wine and the murmur of voices, as Giovanni, a portly man with a sharp mind and a love for art, welcomed his guests with a warm smile. Leonardo arrived with his pupils, the Mona Lisa carefully draped in a cloth, its wooden frame carried between Francesco and Marco. He wore his usual simple tunic, his long hair tied back, his face serene despite the weight of the moment. Michelangelo, who had secured an invitation through a mutual patron, stood near the back of the room, his arms crossed, his eyes glinting with anticipation as he waited for the unveiling. Giovanni raised a hand, silencing the crowd, and gestured to Leonardo with a nod. "My friends," he said, his voice carrying over the murmurs, "tonight we are honored to witness the work of a true master, Leonardo da Vinci. He has promised us a portrait unlike any other, a vision of beauty that will captivate Florence. Let us see it." The crowd applauded, their eyes fixed on the draped canvas as Leonardo stepped forward, his movements deliberate, his expression calm. Michelangelo leaned forward, his heart pounding with excitement, as Leonardo reached for the cloth, ready to pull it away and reveal the defaced painting. But as the cloth fell to the floor, the crowd's reaction was not what Michelangelo had expected. Instead of gasps of horror, there were murmurs of awe, followed by a wave of applause that filled the hall. The Mona Lisa stood before them, its surface pristine, the dark streak that Paolo had painted nowhere to be seen. The woman's enigmatic smile seemed to glow in the candlelight, her eyes following each viewer with an almost knowing gaze, the misty background shimmering with an otherworldly quality. The patrons leaned closer, their faces filled with wonder as they noticed the subtle details, the delicate play of light on her face, the depth in her eyes, the way her smile seemed to shift with every angle. "It's as if she's alive," a noblewoman in a crimson gown whispered, while a merchant nearby nodded. "I've never seen anything like it." Michelangelo's smirk faded, his eyes widening in disbelief as he pushed through the crowd to get a closer look. The painting was flawless, its beauty undeniable. But how could it be? He had seen Paolo smear the pigment with his own eyes. There was no way Leonardo could have repaired it in time. His mind raced, his hands clenching into fists as he turned to Leonardo, his voice trembling with a mix of anger and confusion. This is impossible," he stammered, his face flushing with embarrassment as the crowd turned to him, their whispers growing louder. "I know what I saw. Your painting was ruined. How did you fix it so quickly?" Leonardo turned to Michelangelo, his dark eyes steady, a faint smile playing on his lips. "The painting was never ruined, Michelangelo," he said, his voice soft but resonant, carrying over the hushed crowd. "What your apprentice smeared was not the true canvas, but a protective layer I had placed over it, a thin sheet of treated cloth, painted to look like the surface of the Mona Lisa. I knew there were those who might try to sabotage my work, so I took precautions. The real painting was always safe beneath." The crowd gasped, their murmurs turning to exclamations of amazement as Leonardo continued, his tone calm but firm. "But there is more to this portrait than meets the eye. Look closer, and you'll see its true secret." He stepped forward and tilted the canvas slightly, allowing the candlelight to fall upon it at a different angle. The crowd leaned in, their breaths held, as the light revealed a hidden detail, a faint, almost invisible sketch beneath the woman's smile, a series of delicate lines that formed the shape of a dove, a symbol of peace and harmony. The sfumato technique, which Leonardo had perfected, allowed the dove to appear only under certain lighting, a secret message woven into the very fabric of the painting. "This dove," Leonardo said, his voice filled with quiet conviction, "is a reminder that art is not just beauty. It is a message, a vision of what we can be. While some seek to destroy, true art seeks to heal." The crowd erupted into applause, their voices a chorus of praise as they marveled at the hidden detail, their respect for Leonardo growing with every word. Giovanni de' Medici stepped forward, his eyes shining with admiration, and offered to buy the painting on the spot. But Leonardo shook his head, his expression serene. "She is not ready," he said. "Her time will come." Michelangelo, meanwhile, felt the weight of his own actions crashing down upon him. The crowd's whispers turned to murmurs of disapproval, their eyes casting sidelong glances at him, their expressions a mix of pity and scorn. He had come to the palazzo expecting to humiliate Leonardo, to prove himself the better artist, but instead he had been humbled in front of all of Florence. The Mona Lisa, with its hidden dove and haunting beauty, had stripped away his arrogance, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. As the evening drew to a close, the guests began to depart, their voices filled with awe as they recounted the unveiling to one another. Michelangelo lingered in the hall, his cloak now feeling heavy on his shoulders, his pride a hollow shell. After a long moment, he approached Leonardo, who was packing his brushes into a leather satchel, his pupils standing nearby with proud smiles. "Leonardo," Michelangelo said, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes fixed on the ground, I was wrong. I let my jealousy blind me, and I tried to destroy your work. But you've shown me what true art can be. Can you forgive me?" Leonardo paused, setting down his satchel, and turned to face Michelangelo, his expression as calm as ever, but his eyes filled with understanding. "Jealousy is a fire that burns the one who holds it, Michelangelo," he said, his voice gentle but profound. "But it can also be a spark that lights a new path. You are a great artist, with a vision all your own. Let this be a lesson, not to diminish others, but to create something that lifts us all." Michelangelo's throat tightened, the truth of Leonardo's words cutting deeper than any insult ever could. He thought of the countless times he had let his rivalry with Leonardo fuel his anger, the way he had dismissed others to elevate himself, and for the first time he saw the emptiness of it all. "I've been a fool," Michelangelo admitted, his voice breaking as he met Leonardo's gaze. "But I want to learn, to see the world as you do, to create with purpose, not pride. Will you teach me?" Leonardo smiled, a warmth in his expression that seemed to light up the dim hall. He reached into his satchel and pulled out a blank sheet of parchment, handing it to Michelangelo with a nod. "Start with this," he said. "Draw what you feel, not what you think others want to see. The rest will come in time." Michelangelo took the parchment, his hands trembling slightly, but his eyes shone with a new determination. He bowed his head in gratitude, a gesture of respect he had never offered anyone before, and turned to leave, his cloak trailing behind him. As he walked away, the weight of his past arrogance seemed to lift, replaced by a quiet hope that he could become more than he had been. Leonardo watched him go, then returned to his work, his thoughts already drifting to the next stroke, the next idea, the next mystery to unravel. The Mona Lisa would remain with Leonardo for the rest of his life, a constant companion as he traveled from Florence to Milan and eventually to France, where he would spend his final days. The painting, with its enigmatic smile and hidden dove, would go on to captivate the world, its secrets whispered about for centuries to come. But on that night in Florence, it had done something even greater. It had humbled a man who thought he knew everything, and in doing so had shown the world that true art is not just a creation, but a bridge between hearts. So, the next time you let envy guide your actions, remember Leonardo's lesson. The greatest masterpieces are those that heal, not harm. If this story touched your heart, we have many more tales of Leonardo's brilliance, compassion, and genius waiting for you. Click the screen to explore and subscribe for daily stories that inspire, educate, and remind us of the power of art to change lives.